Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the session that is about the future of two things together. It's the future of AI, and we're all wondering where that is going, and it's the future of Africa. And the session is about the future of AI and Africa. And we have a packed session for the next 2 hours where we've brought together a number of stakeholders from industry to grassroots movements to very big companies, to smaller organizations, to people who work in the tech and startup space. And we wanted this session to be a place where we really think about strategically where Africa is going in the AI space. We don't have many academics on stage, and this is deliberate. Did you turn off my mic? This is deliberate because AI development is at the mix of so many things. So I'd like to invite Oba Mekeke to my good friend Oba Mekeke to give our first address. Obam is the head of DeepMind, or Google DeepMind's education team. He is amongst the leadership team in DeepMind, responsible for the Google DeepMind scholarships, the 160 scholars we have at AIMS over the next 4 years. He is an extremely strong supporter of all sorts of educational initiatives in Africa. I've known Obam as a good friend for many years. We worked together even before he joined Google DeepMind. He was instrumental in getting travel scholarships for students from across Africa to conferences from Google. He is instrumental in running all of Google DeepMind's educational and outreach initiatives, including partnerships with universities. He also has recently been given the title of Master of the British Empire, or MBE. This is the title that someone like the Queen gives you. And I'm not 100% sure of the process, but I think the Queen would knock you on the shoulder with a sword or something like that. So it is really wonderful, Obam, that you could join us. On behalf of AIMS in South Africa and the AIMS network, we just want to say thank you very much for Google DeepMind, for your support, for your belief in the youth in Africa, for your belief that there is such a, I want to say, untapped wealth of incredible talent and rough diamonds in Africa that are ready to change the world. Thank you for your belief in us when this program was still in its infancy, when no one thought that it would happen. Thank you that you pulled together all the strings behind the scenes. So, Obam, it's an honor for me to welcome you as a friend, collaborator, and also someone who I look up to on stage, virtually. Thanks.
A very warm and kind introduction. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. And thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I only wish I could have been there in person to meet with every one of you and actually shake your hands for also all the awesome work you are all doing to nurture the AI ecosystem in Africa. As Ulrich said, I'm Obum Ekeke, and as an African, I must say it's actually a privilege to be speaking to you at the AIMS birthday celebration. And as head of education partnerships at Google DeepMind, my job is to think about the next generation of leaders in AI and to make sure that AI meets its tremendous potential to empower students and educators. So for those of you, I believe everyone knows who Google DeepMind is, but for those who may not know, Google DeepMind is a unit of Google that is focused on AI research. Our mission is to build AI responsibly to benefit humanity. The mission, you can think about it from 3 key concepts. The first is what we do. We build AI. The second part of the mission is how we do it. We build AI responsibly. And in line with our AI principles, we take a deliberate approach to AI deployment We question our own assumptions. We invite broader discussions at every step of building AI, and we seek out diverse perspectives. And then the last concept in our mission is why we do what we do. It's simply to benefit the whole of humanity. We strongly believe that AI needs to benefit everyone, not just those who build it. And crucially, we use AI to focus on solving problems that will unlock new breakthroughs and opportunities downstream. We call this kind of problem root node problems, like the roots of a tree. By solving a root node problem, we help bring a tree of knowledge to life. And this approach of focusing on solving the root node problem has led to exciting real-world breakthroughs in areas from mathematics to climate, from material science to biology, and more. And to highlight one of our major breakthroughs that you may have perhaps heard of, AlphaFold. AlphaFold was a major breakthrough in biology, specifically predicting the structures of protein folding. And AlphaFold was made available to the scientific community freely. We built the AlphaFold database in partnership with the European Bioinformatics Institute. The database is essentially a Google search for proteins that provides free and instant access to the 200 million structures of proteins that we've predicted using AlphaFold. Any biologist can use this, even if they don't know how to code or they don't have access to any compute. And recently, we also launched a free online training resource that is open or called AlphaFold, a practical guide. The resource is co-created with the European Bioinformatics Institute to help scientists around the world to better understand and use AlphaFold to advance their own research. So when we think about solving root node problems to unlock greater knowledge with AI, part of this is about helping empower scientists around the world to use AI. This means AI can support scientists, including African structural biologists, like the community at BioStruct Africa, to advance our collective understanding of important problems, like in science. And unlocking new knowledge will help solve currently intractable problems that matter to a wide range of communities. I just want to give some examples of research that personally inspired me as an African. From work done at Google DeepMind in conservation to incredible community and grassroots-led efforts for African languages, including Masakani, which I believe some of you in the audience may already be involved in. To also work done from Google Africa on flood data, through to even research done directly by scholars who have been funded by Google DeepMind to study at leading African universities, and who I had the privilege to hear about their work in person at last year's Deep Learning Endeavor. So all of these examples have really helped me to truly understand AI's incredible potential to address the problems that matter the most. But whilst I'm excited about AI and its potential, the fact that barriers remain to supporting enough talented people to bring the potential of AI to life, both across Africa and in many other parts of the world, is disturbing. To give one example of this, in the first 20 years of NeurIPS, I'm sure all of you are familiar with NURIPS. In the first 20 years of NURIPS, all 20 years put together, how many accepted papers had at least one author from a research institution in Africa? Can anyone guess? The answer, sadly, was 0. There was no accepted paper that had at least one author from any research institution in Africa. So the community needs to work collectively to help grow and empower the next generation of AI talent today, to ensure that this unfortunate history does not define the future for Africa. And in my view, education is key to this future for Africa. Things are changing fast in the AI ecosystem, and I wholeheartedly believe education opportunities are a key part of changing this landscape for the better. In fact, one could call education one of the root nodes we need to solve to unlock AI's potential and support the next generation of talented African AI researchers and engineers. The team I lead at Google DeepMind has a core goal to help expand learning for everyone. And we are going all in on that goal, approaching it from multiple different angles. In the first instance, I believe we need to make sure that the next generation of thinkers and leaders understand what AI is and how they can participate in building it. Not everyone today currently has access to resources to help them learn AI. This is why Google DeepMind and the Raspberry Pi Foundation co-created and recently expanded access to the Experience AI program. For those of you who may not have heard about Experience AI is a set of AI lessons, activities, and video tutorials for 11 to 14-year-olds to learn about AI. Since launching last year, it has already reached over 400,000 students through their teachers, and now it's poised to reach even more in countries around the world. In fact, I'm proud to announce that this program has also launched in Kenya this year, and the localized English language lessons are already available on the Experience AI website for students in Kenya and teachers in Kenya. So by making AI education more accessible and inclusive, we can help young people at very young age to find ways to responsibly use AI in their everyday life. This leads us to our second approach. We believe that better AI education today means a better prepared AI workforce of tomorrow. This has to be true for every student, regardless of their background or where they come from. So our AI talent pipeline funding aims to help schools and universities to broaden participation and to create a better pipeline of diverse talent in AI. So far, organizations have used this funding to offer STEM enrichment, undergraduate placements, postgraduate scholarships, and postdoctoral fellowships. In Africa, this funding has supported over 70 postgraduate scholars so far, with more incredible AIMS students yet to join this year. And in addition to funding, we strive to offer mentorship, resources, and opportunities to help students become the AI leaders of tomorrow. As someone who grew up in a humble background in Nigeria, I'm sure you would have figured out from my accent that I come from Nigeria. I'm super proud and excited to see the impact that increasing access to education through programs like this, one, can have to wider society, especially in Africa. So simply put, we have to ensure that the new opportunities AI creates are widely distributed, and partnering with universities is a key tool to do this. And one example is our funding to AIMS, who has established an incredible program to build the scientists of tomorrow. I'd like to say big congratulations to everyone at AIMS, and happy birthday to all of you as part of AIMS, and especially to Ulrich as well, my colleague. AIMS has used Google DeepMind's funding to create a cutting-edge one-year residential master's in AI for science, and to train 160 master's students over 4 years. This support includes both financial help to remove the barriers that may prevent someone from being able to take study or relocate, and also aims to remove some of the other obstacles that students may face by offering mentoring, networking, and virtual events to help students build skills and learn from the global perspective of peers around the world. In a few minutes, you will hear from some of the current AIMS scholars, and who will share their experiences of the program so far. And fostering AI talent requires a thriving educational ecosystem, but it also requires a broader community. And here, I want to celebrate just some of the fantastic organizations we have had the privilege of supporting over the years to deliver community events and hackathons to support learners across Africa. We've been a supporter of the Deep Learning Endeavor since 2017, from volunteering to funding, and just so excited to see it support over 800 AI students, researchers, and community leaders last year in Accra, Ghana. We were also delighted to be a supporter of Zindi, Zindi's University Hackathons in 2023, with a large number of student participants from universities across Africa. So I can say hand on heart that it's been incredible to see the growth of the AI ecosystem in Africa, thanks to the efforts of people like you, students, researchers, volunteers, and incredible organizations that we have been privileged to support. And it's this true community effort that makes this growth possible. Community organizations, universities, and volunteers are the ones planting the seeds, watering the roots, and we truly can't wait to see the AI-enabled future from these efforts. But of course, a better world with AI won't emerge by accident. It will take all of us to contribute to making it happen, and ensuring access to AI education is possible for everyone. So with a fair dose of humility and through whatever part we can play, we hope to have a hand in building a future, as we say in Google DeepMind's mission, that benefits humanity. And so I wanted to end on a message of hope. Through the vision and efforts of the African AI community, the ecosystem for Africa for AI has already advanced so very far. I want to echo a great hero of mine to say that education is key to going even further. Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. By advancing education, supporting students, teachers, and researchers, we have the opportunity to change the status quo. So let's be champions and role models for positive change in our various organizations, in our communities, in whatever way we can. Let's also continue to fight for a world where AI education is open to all. Let's change the world for the better. Thank you very much again for having me. And now it's my great pleasure to hand back to some of the very first cohort of Google DeepMind scholars who will be talking about their experiences as part of the AIMS AI for Science program. Thank you.
Hello. Greetings, everyone. My name is Tlotlo Uepeng from Botswana, currently a student here in the New Stellar AI for Science Master's Program. I'm very honored to be addressing all of you here today, and I'd like to thank DeepMind for all the support that they've given us. Not only have they given us financial support, but they've also given us mentorship. It is through this mentorship that it has made such a positive impact, not only on my academic growth, but also it is something that I've seen also in my colleagues as well. Initially, we started with a workshop, and in this workshop, we garnered a lot of invaluable skills that I see will transcend even beyond education, even beyond from here AIMS. It will transcend even to our work lives. But most importantly as well, I have been introduced to my DeepMind mentor. He has served as a pillar of support. He has been a fountain of knowledge. His name is Dr. Spencer. Fortunately, he is someone that has faced similar obstacles that I have faced as well. So he has been constantly giving me valuable knowledge and insights into how do I progress or navigate towards what I aspire to be in the future. And to AIMS and the people of DeepMind, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just like DeepMind give us the possibility to chat with to communicate with our mentor in French. I'm going to speak in French today. Sorry for people who are not a French speaker, but we will have our academic director here, Claire, who is going to translate.
One sentence at a time, eh?
Ok. D'accord, je m'appelle Carlin Foka, je viens du Cameroun. J'ai un background en mathématiques et en big data.
Alors, I am Caroline Foka, I come from Cameroon and I have a background in mathematics.
Ok, c'est vraiment un plaisir pour moi d'être étudiant ici à AIMS pour le Master AI for Science. Et je profite de l'occasion justement pour remercier notre président, Ulrich, et notre directrice académique, Claire, pour tout le support qu'ils nous apportent. C'est vrai que le programme est très intense, mais nous profitons au maximum.
It's a great pleasure to be here at AIMS, and I would like to thank the director Ulrich and the academic director of the AI for Science program. It's really a fantastic experience for everyone.
Ok, concernant Google DeepMind, je suis vraiment reconnaissant.
Concerning Google DeepMind, I'm very grateful.
Pour l'occasion qu'il nous donne de venir ici à AIMS, Afrique du Sud, et de suivre tous ces cours qui sont vraiment extraordinaires.
For the opportunity to come to AIMS, South Africa, and to follow all of the lectures who are just extremely enriching and extraordinary.
Et je suis particulièrement reconnaissant concernant le programme de mentorship.
And I'm very grateful regarding the mentorship program.
C'est vraiment inestimable pour moi d'avoir l'occasion de discuter avec quelqu'un qui travaille à Google DeepMind.
It's such of a high value to actually be able to talk to someone who is working at DeepMind.
Qui partage son expérience avec moi tous les jours. Comment est-ce qu'il a fait pour arriver à DeepMind et ce qu'il fait chaque jour au quotidien.
A person who is sharing their experience and how they managed to go to DeepMind from the start to now, and how they manage also their day-to-day life.
Et qui par-dessus quoi me donne certaines astuces pour aussi pouvoir arriver au niveau où il est actuellement.
And also giving me a lot of tips so that I can reach the level where they are right now.
Je suis particulièrement aussi reconnaissant du fait que Google DeepMind, ils ont réussi à me matcher avec quelqu'un qui satisfait particulièrement correspond particulièrement à ma personnalité.
And they managed to actually match with me a mentor that is really totally in sync with my personality.
Dans la mesure où déjà il me permet de communiquer en anglais et en français.
in the sense that I can speak in English and in French with him.
Donc c'est vraiment un grand privilège et il m'aide beaucoup, même,
It's a great privilege. He's helping me a lot,
même en dehors du domaine académique,
even outside of any academic matters.
où il a par exemple une fois j'ai eu... Can I share it?
Yeah, sure.
J'ai eu un problème une fois avec un organisme où on passe des tests en ligne.
I got once an issue with an organization for online tests.
Il m'a apporté son support et son aide, allant jusqu'à contacter l'entreprise en question pour
And I got
essayer de
support
trouver une
because he contacted the company for that.
So, son nom c'est Piotr Mitrowski, donc je le remercie ici et merci à DeepMind.
Thank you
Merci
very
à
much
vous.
to my mentor. Thank you very much, DeepMind.
Hello, I will go also in French. Ok. Je m'appelle Beria, je viens du Tchad. Avant de venir à EMS, j'ai fait l'ICA, l'Institut sous-régional des statistiques et d'économie appliquée de Yaoundé.
I'm Beria. I come from Chad, and before coming to AIMS, I was at the can you say it?
ICA,
Say ICEA,
statistical.
Institut Statistique. I have to say it in French. It's a French acronym. Okay, Institute of Statistics in Yaoundé,
Yeah.
Cameroon.
J'étais boursier de la Banque mondiale, mais je n'ai pas eu l'occasion d'avoir un mentorat.
I got a bursary for the World Bank, but I didn't have the opportunity to get a mentor, to benefit from a mentor.
Et je crois que le programme AI for Science, c'est la meilleure chose qui soit arrivée à mon parcours académique.
And I think AI for Science is the best thing that happened in my academic path.
Concernant mon mentorship à Google DeepMind, je suis très fier parce que je suis quelqu'un qui aime particulièrement l'application de l'intelligence artificielle dans le domaine de la robotique.
Okay, I am really proud because I'm someone who really likes the implementation of AI in the domain of robotics.
Mesdames et messieurs, permettez-moi de citer le nom de mon mentor, monsieur Antoine Lorraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me allow you to quote my mentor's name, Antoine Dorin.
C'est un expert en data science et robotique au niveau de Google DeepMind.
He's an expert in data science and robotics at DeepMind.
Nous discutons maintenant du RoboCat. C'est un agent intelligent multitâche de manipulation robotique publié par Google DeepMind récemment.
We are talking about RoboCat, which is an AI agent developed by DeepMind.
À travers cette discussion, j'ai compris beaucoup de choses concernant l'application de l'intelligence artificielle en robotique.
And through these talks, I really understand a lot of things on how to implement AI for robotics.
Et ces applications incluent généralement le Natural Language Processing, le Computer Vision et aussi le Reinforcement Learning.
And this includes natural language processing, computer vision, and
Et au-delà de l'aspect technique, nous discutons de l'aspect non technique, à savoir comment construire ma personnalité au niveau de comment être un ingénieur en intelligence artificielle.
And beyond all of the academic and the technical aspects, we are also talking about other things. For example, how to build a personality as an engineer in AI.
Et cela inclut les aspects comme comment construire ma carrière après EMS. Ça inclut généralement comment rechercher les opportunités, comment s'y prendre et où est-ce qu'il faut rechercher pour pouvoir impacter le monde dans le domaine de l'intelligence artificielle.
These include how to actually build a career after AIMS, where to look for opportunities to have the maximum impact in the world.
Je vais finir par remercier d'abord l'équipe de EMS pour m'avoir donné cette opportunité de venir ici. Et je remercie également Google DeepMind de cette bourse. C'est peut-être seulement une bourse, mais pour moi, ça représente une grande chance parce que je viens d'une...
I would like to thank the AIMS team, and of course I would like to thank DeepMind because for me it represents an enormous opportunity.
Et c'est vraiment rassurant de voir que toutes les classes sociales venant de tous les coins d'Afrique ont la chance de venir étudier dans de bonnes conditions et pouvoir réaliser leurs rêves.
It's really relieving to see that all socio-economic groups from all over Africa can actually get this chance to study in such conditions.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
So these are 3 scholars. Google DeepMind does an amazing job of finding a one-to-one mentor for every one of our scholars. It is incredible. So thank you so much, Obam. We're going to switch you off the stage now, and then it's my great privilege to talk to you about grassroots initiatives in growing the AI landscape in Africa. And I'd like to welcome Jade Abbott to the stage. Jade is an incredible human being. I first met her in 2017 in Johannesburg at the first Deep Learning Indaba at the University of the Witwatersrand. And roll back a number of years. In 2017, there was almost no action in natural language processing in Africa at all. Since then, Jade has nurtured and curated and mothered a community. She would say that she's not the only person nurturing and curating this community, but she's one of the main people behind a community called Masakane that supports thousands of natural language processing researchers across Africa. A couple of years ago, Jade ran a paper that won, and a research project that won the Wikimedia Research of the Year award. So the Wikimedia Foundation gives 2 prizes every year for the best impactful research across all disciplines. And Masakane won research from Africa. And they won for a number of reasons, and Jade's going to tell us all about it. But they won because they did not have a first author on their paper. They found a way to run research as a community where you don't have a principal investigator that takes all the credit. They found a way to democratize research across Africa so that you don't have a first author that claims all the credit. And what they've achieved through the example is I've seen big tech companies trying to replicate it at the moment. And we think of Africa as a place where you can pioneer. I think everything that Masakane has done and what Jade's going to tell us about is pioneering in every possible sense of the word. It's not often that we see big tech companies try to replicate research models. And these are completely different research models that are homegrown in Africa, that are inclusive, that takes care of every person's individual needs and contributions. I'm not going to say a lot more. Jade, thank you so much for joining us on the stage. It's an honor to know you as a friend. It's an honor that you're here today. And I want to say a last thing. It's just been remarkable to see this community grow. It's been the nicest thing in the whole world. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you. Let's play with the clicker. Have we figured out where to point it? There we go. Where did I point it? There. Cool. Thank you for the lovely intro, Ulrich. To second back, as we'll see, if it weren't for Ulrich, Masakane would never have happened either. Among a couple of others. So I'm excited to be here today to talk about this revolution in the way we do research. And so when you read something like this, you hundreds of active researchers, international acclaim, multi-award-winning research, multiple grant awards, multiple startups, seeded other research groups, and multiple conference workshops with hundreds of publications. There's a picture in the background there. I don't know if anyone knows where that is. That's MIT. So we think it might come from something like MIT. Maybe it'll come from something like this. Does anyone know where this is? So that is the Institute of Mathematics at Oxford. You think it might come from there. But the truth is it didn't. This research group didn't come from any of that. This research group came from a group of people working across Africa during a time of a lot of struggle, actually. It was during the time of COVID. What this did mean is that people weren't outside, we were all inside. And actually we started a little bit before then, already with these online meetings with people across the continent and actually, frankly, across the world. And this is a Pan-African research group. This is a Pan-African research group. These statistics you see are us. This was something that the continent locally developed. It's not something that was in person. It didn't require having everyone in the same room. Here's a little picture of the emojis from our Slack. You can see this is a place of love. The most used one is a heart and then a celebration, which is really representative of the type of people as part of this group. And so the aim of this talk is to share some lessons from Masakane. Many of you are budding researchers in your space and looking for ways to move forward. And so lessons from Masakane, I call it building community and hacking systems. And so I like to refer to this quote, this concept by one of the Ulrich's close friends and in Daba. I always find it weird having a mic on this. Does anyone mind if I take the mic off the thing? I can't. Standard. They call it the critical yeast. And so the quote by Shakir Mohammed, who is also one of the co-founders of the Deep Learning in Daba, is as follows. This is the bread we smelt earlier. Yeast has that effect when making bread. Starts out with a small amount, but multiplies to become the key ingredient that changes water and flour into something textured and delicious. That is what is asked of us. Who are the groups of people that, when put and held together, begin to act like yeast, multiplying exponentially? And as that group rises and grows, they lift up the people around them and transform the world around us. And so this is a story a little bit about critical yeast. And critical yeast can take many forms, which I'll show you. And when you are looking to start something or get something going or create a movement in a field that you care about, or even join one, we think of that critical yeast. So, go back one. So this is a picture from the first Deep Learning in Daba. I've looked at Ulrich's slides. He has the same picture. And so this was part of the critical yeast. I think the team, when they started, he'll tell you the story, is they expected to get maybe 50 or 60 people, and I think it ended up with like 600 showing up. Once again, people from all across the continent. I was there somewhere in the corner. And the people in this picture are people I went on later to found companies with, people I went on later to found Masakane with, people went on later to run research with, to get funding with, to have best friends from across the continent that when you see each other once or twice a year, you run screaming because you're so excited to see them. And so this is part of that critical yeast. From this critical yeast stemmed educational movements. And this is from just the attendees. So myself and Pilanomi, who we heard from yesterday in our keynote, my co-founder, here's a picture of her. We'd organized not long after the Indaba, where we met and where we'd had a presentation eventually. We went and created a group where we were teaching women about machine learning. And I just really like this photo of us in Johannesburg having these really cool conversations. Another example of critical yeast, Vukosi Maravata, I think he's coming down in 2 days, helped organize something called the Soti Yeti Conference. To encapsulate this, this was 5 years ago. 6 years ago, so not that long. And you can see there are not that many people. This was a group of us came together. We had a couple of people online. We just came to talk about NLP in Africa. You can even to this day go look on the website and see the discussions that were had back then, how relevant they still are. And because of all these little moments in time, because of the people we met, because of the Indaba, because of the little offshoots and the time we spent sitting, having conversations. The one key kickoff was at the Indaba the 1 year, that is me with long hair in Kenya, is we came up with this moment of saying, you know, the problems that we have on the African continent, they're not something that could be solved by any individual. They're something that gets solved by the group. And so looking at something as important and as key as language, right? That is what Masakhane is about, is language. How can we support languages in Africa when there is no research, when there is no data, when there is such a diversity of culture? Who gets to own that? We needed everyone. And so this critical yeast is the core group. From here, we ended up with around 50 people. And so this stemmed from what was originally just me making a couple of ponderings to finding other people who are having the same ponder, who are having the same wonder about why, how could we change things? And so I'm here to tell you that there's more than one way to be a researcher, whether it be in mathematics, whether it be in engineering, whether it be in science, computer science, whatever that might be, AI. And so here's a really fun picture that I like of all or many of the kind of affinity groups and grassroots groups that have appeared in AI over the last while. You can see we've got way back, people like to look at CERN. We all know CERN. CERN are notorious for having every single author on their paper that's ever contributed to their work, as well as organizations like the Santa Fe Institute, which have similar principles. But from there, we see a number of other organizations emerge, including Women in Machine Learning and Data Science, which many of you might be a part of, who are scattered all across the world, completely decentralized run organization that are still going to this day. The Deep Learning Indaba, Data Science Nigeria, and along came Masakhane, the ML Collective, which is also an alternative way of achieving a PhD-like education in AI without having to go through traditional means. To Sisonke Biotic, which is a spin-off of Masakhane that works in the health space. And what's really interesting is not all of those were research organizations. Some of them were educational. Some of them were, ended up turning into startups. But however, among these, there were ones that published papers. Their goal was to bring people together to find ways to do research that weren't under an institution. And this is really impactful because so many people do not have that opportunity to attend an institution. They don't have the ability or the means or the support to be able to go to tertiary education. And so in order to democratize it, we really need to think about how can anyone become a researcher without having that sort of access. And so we've seen this kind of increase as time's gone on. The most recent one that I know of is Roya. Roya are doing computer vision, so if you are interested in computer vision, go check out them. If you're interested in healthcare for ML, AI in Africa, then Sisonke Biotic, and then obviously Masakhane if you're interested in NLP for Africa. There. And so a lot of this is centered in the principle of Ubuntu, our favorite principle. I am because we are. A person is a person through another person. And if we think about that and kind of the concept of something called participatory research, I think in a lot of the engineering fields, this is not something we understand. We understand there are researchers and there are subjects which we then research. Participatory research says that everyone who is part of that research process, or every person that is involved in the research process, whether they are a person who generates the data, whether they are the person being interviewed, whether they are the scientist with the qualifications who knows how to do the experiments, whether they are the people administrating at the organization, they are actively part and involved in crafting how that research occurs. And so it came across this very interesting quote. And this very interesting philosophy. And this kind of happened a lot long after Masakhane, after it had achieved all its awards and successes. And we were trying to understand what it was that we'd really been able to do. And I think this captured it, is that you can see Ubuntu as a research philosophy. Giving the research a human face. So instead of this kind of top-down view of this is how research should work, instead we have a bottom-up approach which advocates for collaboration with participants and the community. And this kind of gets reflected in the ways of working. Quick side punt. If you're interested in starting your own one on a topic you care about, whether it be, I see there's a lot going on in topology, or you're interested in joining any of them, you can check out grassroots-party.africa. All the groups I've sort of mentioned are getting involved there. And one of our goals is to be able to get new grassroots initiatives incubated. So people taking photos. And I think I just changed the slide. I'll take it back. There we go, in case you need to get it. So some more tips. Be bold, be ambitious, be curious. I think a lot of the things that we do is we think as Africa, we don't have the, it's not up to us to determine the research direction, but it really is. So this is actually the post that started it. It was in 2017. I just had one of the Indabas. It was the second one in Stellenbosch. And I found some data or one paper that was pointing to research on NLP in Africa, and I messaged them. I won't say who they were. They never got back to me. But I wanted to build translation tools, and so I started reaching out. But the fact that we didn't get the reply didn't stop us. And so this idea of dream big and then take small little steps. Small little steps build. And so this entire initiative started with a weekly meeting. And this is the tip I will give everyone. A short weekly meeting about something you care about ultimately will turn into something. It might take time, but ultimately it turns into something. So initially, some of the early research that I got to work with was with wonderful Laura Martinez. And we, after the Indaba, would meet once a week and we'd have a reading group, just the two of us over some drinks. And that's how we wrote some of the initial papers and where we started realizing that this problem was bigger than us. But having at least one person who cared about it enabled that as part of that critical yeast to get it going. And with this evolved into the weekly Masakane meeting. This weekly meeting of this group of vagabond researchers with no real home except an online Zoom account. We met weekly and we discussed stuff and tried to figure things out. And this continued on for years. And it still continues today, whether I'm there or not. Just because people care, just because people want a space to discuss these. And one of the key things there is that even if you drop off, if they're in, you've built up enough of a community, you can always restart. People will always come back. And so these small regular steps build. It doesn't take something big. It doesn't take a big move. It takes a little move. Lots of little moves. Okay. And from there you can build community. And so one of the other Indabas, Vikosi Maravate, got on stage and said, what matters is community. And he just went community, 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 until everyone was saying community, community, community. Because that's what you're building, is these research communities, these little receptacles of people who care about the same thing, who want to work on the same stuff, who support each other beyond just the work, but are interested ultimately building relationships across cultures. This is a great photo in the middle of Unyothi, the one Zoom call showing us she's cooking her dinner and sharing that and telling us about the languages she's speaking. And these sort of things would happen quite often. We'd have socials, and that was just so that we'd have an opportunity to not only talk about the work, but to build connections with the people, because people are at the core of this. People will randomly post requests all the time on Slack to be like, hey, would someone take a look at my PhD? I need some feedback. And just having that group of friends around who cared about it was super important. And then, in addition to that, we always used to try share our cultural stuff, and I think being in languages was also very important. We still have multiple Masakane playlists, so if you go online, you can find all the music that the community has added to its playlists, which we would play during events. Another key thing to keep aware of is operations are key. If you are starting a research project with some friends by yourself, as a young person, one of the key things is none of us were like I said, there was no principal investigator, there was no one more senior, there was no one who had a better degree, who knew how they were doing this. We were all just trying to do this. But paying attention to some of the administration. You don't have a person, there's no dedicated admin person who's going to do it. So having some sort of decentralized leadership where everyone knows how to access stuff, and allowing people to just be able to come up with their own ideas on how to make things work. Having deadlines in the form of conferences or something that the group cares about. Documentation, writing things down so when people join, they have something to look at. the coordinators, your coordinators are also researchers too. Without them, the work wouldn't happen. Include them as authors. And then lastly, funding structures. It's a bit more of a long-term one, but you'll see one of the biggest struggles Masakhane eventually got to was actually getting funding into account, which eventually made, I think, Ulrich a lot of paperwork. I don't know if you got involved with it. And this has kind of culminated, and it's taken years, 5 years, but we eventually had a strategic workshop where we all got together and we mapped out our journey, and we've come up with how we can move forward. And so these little things of writing down some stuff and trying things together can actually turn out into quite substantial. We're going to end up with a 5-year strategy plan, which has never happened before. Up until now, we were just kind of going month by month. My next lesson, hack systemic injustice. The reason there was no people publishing in NLP from Africa was because the systems weren't working. The systems still often don't work, but we've managed to make some changes. One of the things that we found unjust in the system of research was the Harvard Medical School form of authorship, which is what most conferences and most academic journals really base their authorship upon. And they say everyone needs to write the manuscript, so the final research. Coordinators must be excluded, and there must be a substantial direct intellectual contribution to the work, which I put in quotation marks, because that's very unclear definition. And it doesn't acknowledge the importance of data and data workers, people who contribute data. And so our model of Masakhane authorship was to change that and say, if you were involved, whether it was generating a result, writing an experiment, coordinating the team, providing data, doing manual analysis, often you'll find the people doing the evaluation are seen as, part of a data, like worker, an object, a thing that does the work. They were included as authors. Whether you're in writing or strategy or providing your lived experience, you're considered a part of the research team and a part of someone who deserved to be on the paper in the end. And so this is what Ulrich was talking about earlier. And so you're a room of maths people, so you'll recognize the symbol as that is the for all symbol. And so that was our first author. And we below wrote that author chose to signify the entire community. The rest of us were just ordered by reverse alphabetical order. And we always get these really fun comments of people who cite us getting these review comments saying, there seemed to be a weird symbol in your references. And we're like, yes, that is correct. That is the first author. And my next tip, and probably one of my biggest one, is to take up space. Don't feel like your work doesn't matter. Be loud and proud about it. I think in Africa we have this internalized imposter syndrome that our work is completely discredited, or because it's consistently discredited by Western media, we become smaller, whereas actually we should take up more space. And so here's an example of ChatGPT calling all languages outside of English foreign, which we had a go at them. They did engage with us, and they subsequently updated the paper, which was nice of them. Another example, that paper that won all the awards, do participatory efforts belong to an NLP conference? There are about 5 of us who worked on the rebuttal to that, and we said we took it on as a serious issue. We're here. It's important that we are seen in the spaces with the rest of the world doing this work. And so I think our rebuttal was, like I said, we worked on it for days. And part of it was motivating why this was so important, that the point of this paper is to show that participatory efforts have to be there in order to enable the type of work that we could have done. It could have never been done any other way. And so that followed with the win. The win of the Wikimedia Foundation Award. From that same paper that nearly didn't get in. We nearly did not get that paper in. It was a weak accept, and because of our discussion and our rebuttal and our argument for space, now we see African papers actually winning other awards within those journals, which were originally turning us down. Take up space. This talk, we changed the way that people did keynote talks. We were asked to do a keynote talk from Masakhane. There were about 12 of us, or I think even more, that presented this presentation. We each took a 5-minute slot on how to do that and how to talk about it. You know, take up space. We won an award for the ARS Arts Council for, once again, the acknowledgement of the impact that we made around language and inclusive research. Take up space. Science and Nature have now written multiple articles about the work that we did because we cared, because we made a noise, and we continue to make a noise about the work and its importance. I'm really not good at this thing. And then last year we had, we've run about 5 workshops at the top conferences. This was the most recent one at iClear, which a couple of you in the AI space might know. And it was the largest workshop out of all the workshops that happened. So they have 20 or 30 workshops that happen, all in very important topics from AI for climate to healthcare. And our workshop had the most attendees and the most participants and the most papers published. So yeah, take up space. And then from there, the big question was like, cool, we've done all this. We've got thousands of participants. We've put out loads of models. We've got papers and papers on different tasks in NLP. What is next? And I always say research can only get you so far. It gets you very far, but it only gets you so far. But sometimes you need to take the next step for taking what research does and turn it into something that can actually be used in the world. And so how do we do that? And so this kind of inspired many of the organizations, or this idea inspired many of the startups on the African continent to come up and say, cool, let's take some of this research, whether it be from Masakhane or from the African NLP space to some of the medical spaces which InstaDeep worked in, to some of the operational work of operationalizing production models that Melio works in or Shanti works in. So this idea that, when you're doing your research, sometimes there's a next step, and becoming an entrepreneur is a pretty cool thing. It's terrifying, but really taking your research to make sure that it actually does the thing. If anything, we need more of that in this continent. So I'd like to inspire everyone to one day, when they've done the thing, to look back and be like, how can we make this work sustainably and actually impact people in the long term? So my question to you is, what will you build? Thank you.
I once asked someone in tech, in the Silicon Valley VC sector, how one would approach innovation in Africa. And his response to me was not to copy anything that's done in Europe or in the US, but to think about angles that could be uniquely addressed in Africa with problems that, or opportunities that we have here. Masakhane is successful because if you can speak an African language anywhere, you are in. And this is the mechanism to democratize natural language research. It finds a solution and a way to pioneer in a space that you would not be able to pioneer in Europe. So I just want to say, can we just give Jade another big hand? This is absolutely exemplary. I'm going to talk to you in the next 20 minutes about another grassroots organization, and I'll be speaking because I'm partly responsible for it. It's called the Deep Learning Indaba. And I'll tell you the story of the Deep Learning Indaba that a few of you might have heard of already. I'm a co-founder here. I'm also a trustee. I also manage their finances, and I write the annual reports, and I get called in when there are anti-money laundering questions that we have to answer. I once spent my entire time between Christmas and New Year defending an African organization to a UK bank to explain to them that everything we do is completely legitimate when we send money to Cameroon and Chad and Congo and every other African country. But we'll get to that. You've heard this question before. NeurIPS is the world's premier artificial intelligence conference on machine learning. In the first 20 years, this slide is first 30 years, it's actually the first 20 years. How many papers were there from any institution in Africa? You know the answer. It's really a harsh statistic. 0 papers in the world's top AI conference for 20 years straight with an African author. So how do you change this? How do you bootstrap African AI to compete at an international level and a very competitive level? And this is a question that was floating around in many people's minds in 2015 and 2016. And there was always an idea of bringing a big conference to Africa, ICML, NeurIPS, etc. The challenge with big conferences is that people parachute in and they parachute out, and nothing changes on the ground. So in 2016, we wrote a small proposal to Demis Hassabis, who's DeepMind's CEO. And we asked him, a few people inside Google DeepMind, for a tiny bit of funding and support to run a machine learning series of masterclasses at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And we told Google DeepMind CEO that we would be lucky if we get 40 students to apply across all of South Africa at that stage. And we had 700 applicants, which posed a really big problem because you plan an event for 40 students and suddenly you have, from a minimal amount of marketing, 700 students who are interested in machine learning at the master's level and beyond, just in South Africa and a few neighboring countries. What do you do then? So we rented the largest lecture hall in Wits. Adam Habib was vice chancellor at the time, and they were extremely supportive. The problem of AI in Africa is one of isolation. If you live in Zambia and you want to do work in reinforcement learning, how many borders do you have to cross before you get to a supervisor that has a PhD in reinforcement learning? 1 border? 2 borders? 3 borders, maybe a flight that's as far as flying from London to beyond Moscow. It's the scale of Africa. And this is true for many countries in Africa. If you want to do natural language processing, which has progressed a lot, you're faced with the same problem of isolation. And isolation is the reason why researchers leave Africa. Because you're in a university with no friends and no peers who stand beside you. And so community is the essence of growing research. So why are there opportunities? You all know these things. Young, enthusiastic demographics, lots of infrastructure investment. It's a place to pioneer new models of research that Jade has talked to you about. And you have so many low-hanging fruit in terms of research problems that you can address. I'll show you a few pictures of the deep learning endowment. But first of all, those of you who are not from South Africa or the Southern African region, what is an endowment? It is a gathering, an important meeting of the elders of a community. So this grassroots movement is about taking all the elders and the young elders of the AI community and bringing them together to debate the state of the world of artificial intelligence today. And the mantra is community, community, community. And this is a picture of what the typical Indaba would look like in some parts of South Africa. As an organization, it runs on 3 pillars. The one is building community. So that is having mentorship built in. That's running a big conference every year. That's running conferences now in 41 countries in Africa. The other one is to find ways to recognize research excellence in Africa for very smart students who are doing great PhDs. And the other one is to train the next generation of leaders, to equip students, to throw them into the deep end, to run their own events. So the mission of this grassroots community is to strengthen African machine learning and AI by building communities, creating leadership, and recognizing excellence in research by all African innovators. I'll show you a few pictures of how it started. This was the picture that Jade showed. You could see many people, if you zoom in, who met in Johannesburg, who are now co-founders of various companies there because they got connected. There was a fantastic event in Stellenbosch with 550 attendees. That event was well supported with Jeff Dean, who was head of Google AI at the time, flying to South Africa for 2 days to speak at this event. And this was a catalyst for much of the research activity we see now in the AI space in South Africa. I roll forward a little bit. We move to Kenyatta University in Kenya, out in Thika Road. This is 2,000 applications now for 700 students. 150 of them travel to Kenya on full scholarships. Flights, accommodation, everything paid for. This is Tunisia in 2020 post-COVID. A little bit smaller, 400 attendees, because we weren't sure what the COVID restrictions would be like. Who of you, I see some people who would have been here. Yes, just raise your hand if you were in Tunis a couple of years ago. 2,000 applications for 400 attendees. And this is last year in Ghana. Prince from Ames Ghana really helped the organization run the largest AI conference or summer school in the world. 800 attendees for a summer school in machine learning. So the largest physical AI summer school, if you can call it that, in the world is happening in Africa. It's not happening in China. It's not happening in India. It's not happening in the US. It's happening on African soil. This is something that I'm incredibly proud of, because Africa is a space where you can do pioneering work. The deep learning Indaba started with a model to oops, I've gone back too many. You're seeing many cool faces. There we go. It started with a model to try and democratize AI research in Africa. And the model was so successful that it was copied by a number of continents. So after Africa, they followed a grassroots movement in South America called KIPU. KIPU follows the same model. They run a big conference every year with a number of offshoot conferences. The Eastern European Summer School grew out of the African model, the Deep Learning Indaba. The Southeast Asian Machine Learning Summer School and Grassroots Initiative grew out of something that was born in Africa. And I think for all of these things, we could be rightly proud. So what does an event look like? You have all the ingredients. You have keynotes, the opportunity to fly in keynotes. There would be many parallel workshops. Initially, it started small with no parallel workshops. Currently, it is almost like a conference where people have to bid to run parallel workshops at this machine learning summer school. So AIMS students, if you want to run a workshop in any particular topic in Senegal this year, just apply to run a workshop. There was also, in 2017, a big gap in the practical application of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And the program in the Deep Learning Indaba is designed so that artifacts are left after the event. So there would be practical sessions that are run, and the hope is that there would be a large enough cohort of students who would understand the same practicals that they could take together to their home universities and run as a common training course. This is going incredibly well. Just some quotes. The practical sessions was one of the best I've experienced. They helped me especially understand the basic concepts of machine learning. So over the last 6 years, we've seen the level of expertise of students increase and increase and increase as these events are run. I'll mention a few more. There's always a research symposium at these events where students are trained to present posters and where research is shared. The main motivation for running poster sessions at these events is not for students or researchers to publish posters. The main motivation is for people to know each other, for people to connect, for people to meet and talk at posters and form research collaborations. Every year there are prizes for the best posters, and these escalate depending on how much funding could be raised. This is the first year where each of the poster prize winners got their own GPU to take home. The year after, the best poster prize winner got an all-expenses-paid trip to Canada to attend NeurIPS. The year after that, that was repeated. And you can imagine the excitement if someone presents a poster and on the final day they get to stage and we say, you know what, you won the best poster. Here's a flight ticket to Canada to attend the premier AI conference in the world. So it generates a lot of energy. Corporate connections are also really important. As an organization, the Deep Learning Indaba tries to connect as many different companies to student researchers as possible. So at any of the events, you would see at least 30 to 40 booths where companies mentor students and where they recruit. This is a local company, African company called InstaDeep, who was part of the Deep Learning Indaba story from the beginning. I'm not going to read the quote to you, but I'll tell you a story about InstaDeep because they started as an African AI company. They were a tiny company where they first attended the Deep Learning Indaba. Fantastic leadership, and they were sold last year for a number that would fund aims for at least 30 years. The number doesn't start with for millions, it starts with B for billions. I can't tell. And so we experiment with ideathons, with sessions where people bring together and pitch startups. And to run a grassroots initiative, you have to keep on experimenting. There was a book that's written, I just forgot the name, but it's Eric Weiss, it's The Lean Startup. It's a model for running organizations in a way that continuously experiments. And so a core principle of this Deep Learning Indaba organization is to do something new every year. And when it fails, you throw it out. If it succeeds, you keep it. The Ideathon is something we ran a number of years. Now it's a core part of the program. It's a chance for students to pitch their startup ideas. Okay, these are statistics from the gathering in Ghana. 800 attendees, 36 countries from Africa represented at a single AI summer school. 50% of them, exactly 400 of them, were women. In terms of gender parity, we're exactly in the middle. 200 travel grants were given, a couple of $100,000 to spend just on travel tickets to get students to Ghana. And 50% of them have never attended a big AI summer school before. So diversity is important. Celebrating women in machine learning is extremely important for this community because this is where the future of development is. There's a quote here from one of the attendees. Indaba really made me understand that your country, gender, color, and race isn't a criteria to being successful. So the picture here is from the Women in Machine Learning breakfast in Tunisia a couple of years ago. At the end of the 27 gathering in Johannesburg, the organization, which wasn't even an organization then, had a tiny bit of funding left. and decided to run an experiment that follows the TED and TEDx model. Do you know TED? Technology industry. Just raise your hand if you've heard about TED or if you watch TED Talks. Okay. Do you know TEDx? Who of you have ever organized a TEDx event in your own country? One person. So we're doing the same for machine learning in Africa. There's one main African AI gathering summer school, and then we give limited funding, a small amount of funding, to anyone who wants to run their own summer school in their own country. And there are a few criteria. It has to be inclusive. You have to think about who in your community is included and who's not included. It has to cross and span multiple universities. It has to show that you think, as an organizer, a group of organizers, outside of any particular department or school or faculty or even university boundaries. It really has to cross all possible boundaries. And these are the only two criteria. The third one being research excellence in the local context. So the picture here is of the Indaba X team in Egypt. If you look at them, they're all women. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there are 10 of them. 10 remarkable women who single-handedly ran the big machine learning summer school in Egypt. It started with 18 countries in 2018. In 2024, there will be 41 countries in Africa that will host a physical, in-person machine learning summer school somewhere. In Cameroon, there are actually 2, Dishang and Yaoundé. Most countries, there are only one. Operationally, it means that it is very challenging to run such an initiative. If you look at any of these annual reports, you'll notice that the reports, this is from Companies House in the United Kingdom, you'll notice that there's a list of countries going from Algeria, Benin, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, blah, blah, all the way to Zambia and Zimbabwe, to which the organization sends money. It's a miracle that this even happens and that no one has yet shut the organization down for anti-money laundering. Because every year we have red flags saying, why do you send money to Nigeria and Senegal and South Africa and Sudan, and what's the commonality between all of these countries? And to explain to the authorities that in every one of these countries, there are enthusiastic young students who care about the futures of their country, and they are taking their futures into their own hands and running with it. So managing Pan-African finances and payments can be done. You grow communities with good infrastructure. If there's no good infrastructure, no community could grow on top of it. If there's good infrastructure that makes growth possible, anything is possible, but infrastructure should never be understated. Okay. There are awards for the best master's thesis in any computational discipline in Africa, for the best PhD thesis. These are the Kambuli and Matai awards. I've got quite a lot to say, so I'll just share a few more things with you. I'll ask Paul to speak a little bit later. As an organization that's grassroots, we also run grassroots research grant challenges. This is the grant challenge from the COVID era. It was a research problem that's particular to Africa, and it is visceral leishmaniasis. It's a disease that you don't really find anywhere in Europe or the US, and it was launched as a research grant challenge that would bring, at the grassroots level, students, researchers, pharmaceutical companies, chemists, biochemists, and a number of others together. This research grant challenge was launched with a big explanation of the research problem, a big launch, and then Zindi, who you'll hear about a little bit later, supported the research challenge with hosting the data, hosting the research challenge as a hackathon, and there were 325 participating teams across Africa and the world who participated in this research grant challenge, and 4 journal papers came out of it in total. As an African AI community, I think we should pitch more research grant challenges that are necessary and important for Africa's development, because these things bring anyone, students, practitioners, companies together under a common goal. I had a conversation about moonshots with the VC of UCT on Sunday night at the party. A moonshot is a challenge that a large group of people all aim for together. And the Moonshot Research Challenge is something that brings people together, but it has one core criteria. Everyone can see the moon. If a group of people can clearly see and describe the moon together, then you're able to coordinate and get great results. And this was a moonshot project that clearly described the research goals. And by clearly describing the moonshot, people could collaborate and contribute. This is just a side comment. Okay, this is promoting research. There's a lot of community building happening. Jade spoke about Masakane, which is the largest natural language processing research community in the world at the moment. It's all over Africa. They've won tremendous awards, got very recognized. Masakane grew out of people connecting. It grew out of two people connecting at an event that was set up to connect researchers. I'll skip a number of slides because I'm already running over time and I've done the wrong thing. Okay, this is Sonke Bartek. I mentioned the other offshoot grassroots initiatives. Scaling, there's a mentorship program that's being run where students are matched with mentors in corporations across the world, ranging from Microsoft, Amazon, banks, etc. These are all short-term mentorship sessions that leverages the global network of supporters here in this grassroots community. There's many topics that are really important, lots of progress, and it's run on purpose-built infrastructure called Baobab, which is an open source tool. There is a large number of supporters in this initiative. These are all companies that contribute, by company standards, a modest amount of money, not a lot, but you'll see there the names of Google DeepMind, Google, Microsoft, Instantly Cohere, if any of you following the AI rat race at the moment. You'll see the Department of Science and Technology in there as the early supporter that made this happen, and DSI funds it every year. Thank you. There's OpenAI, Apple, IDRC, Lalapa, Meta, the Rockefeller Foundation, Facebook. They've rebranded. I just had to make another picture. Uber, Amazon, Nvidia, Visa. Everyone has come to the party. What I have not shown on this picture is the tens to hundreds of African companies that are contributing. These are taxi companies that buy in and say, if you host an event in our city, we are going to provide the taxi rides for free. These are small retailers that said, we are going to give poster prizes as a donation. These are internet service providers like Safaricom that said, well, you know what, we'll put up an internet tower in the middle of Thika Road so that you have extra internet. I have a very funny story before I wrap up, and that's from the first Deep Learning Indaba. We had a retailer who gave prizes for the best posters. Do you know what the prizes were? Microwaves. It's like a game show of old. You win the best poster prize and you get a microwave oven on stage. And that's how you grow a community. Okay, just in terms of impact, this was the front page of Time in September last year. This is the 100 most influential people in AI, and you see Pelenomi on the front page down there, bottom right. And I'll highlight two people here, and I just want to read things, what Time magazine says about them. This is Shakir, one of the co-founders of the Deep Learning Indaba. This is quoting Time magazine, September last year. It says, in Indaba is a gathering to discuss a serious topic, and the Deep Learning Indaba brings together leaders in Africa for networking and learning opportunities in its annual conference. This year is in Ghana. It also supports smaller Indaba X conferences in 36 countries and incentivized research, etc., etc. And here's the deal breaker. It says past conferences have brought together people who eventually co-founded startups like Masakane, like Lelapa, and Nextline. In Eastern Europe and Latin America, machine learning researchers were inspired to start their own grassroots initiatives based on this model. And I copied the text, screenshot the text directly from Time magazine. You had Pelenomi on stage yesterday. Pelenomi, if you read what Time magazine writes about her as co-founder of Lelapa AI, she says, second line, at the Deep Learning Indaba in 2017, a conference that aimed to strengthen machine learning and AI in Africa, she met others who co-founded Lelapa. And unfortunately, Jade has just left the room. This is Time magazine speaking about the impact of community work. There were 4 Africans listed in Time magazine here, and all 4 of them were rooted and connected to the Deep Learning Indaba as a community. So the impact is absolutely phenomenal. I want to say one last thing. It's 100% volunteer driven. No one that you've seen in any of the slides has ever received a cent for the work. There's no payroll, there's no salary, there's no recognition. It means that it's very easy in a way to run such an organization because the keen people stick around with you. It also means that these grassroots initiatives are incredibly easy to scale because you don't have to run through payroll, because you don't have to run through HR processes. You can find volunteers everywhere to bring together their resources to build something amazing. So I just want to ask any of you, if you think about your future as a volunteer, whether this is not something you'd want to volunteer for. And if not, join another grassroots community. And with that, I'll say thank you. Okay, then I'll say one more word. I like to follow what's happening in the world of AI, and I've always kept a close eye on Tübingen with an AI cluster and AI center, and followed the AI center's launch in Tübingen, and then what Picasso said about great artists steal and copy. That is almost what we want to do. So I'd like to invite Dr. Tilman Goch to the stage. And he's going to speak about machine learning, new perspectives for science. He is the director of the Cluster of Excellence in Tübingen at the university there. And Tilman, it's a privilege to invite you to the stage. You are here because we want to learn from your experience. We want to know how we could put together clusters of excellence in Africa. You've seen grassroots communities. Now let's go to the next level. How can we formalize this? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ulrich. Thanks. It's really a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for that invitation. It's just, for me, a source of inspiration, that meeting here, and I'm very happy to give you an overview about what we are doing at Tübingen, or in Tübingen at the moment, and I'm afraid it will be academic. It will not be kind of grassroots, but it will be an academic approach. And it will be a story about building bridges, building bridges between different scientific disciplines, and also bridges between us and Tübingen and you here in Ames. So we started something to partner together with Ames, and I will also address this in my presentation. So just to introduce you at the beginning, the research landscape that we have developed in Tübingen over the last 10 years. So machine learning became a topic in research roughly 20 years ago with Bernhard Schulkopf, one of the pioneers in machine learning that we have in Germany. So he started this 20 years ago, and then it became really a hot topic roughly 10 years ago now. In a situation where the state of Baden-Württemberg had the idea to bring together expertise from the academic sector from 2 universities, the University of Stuttgart, who is very strong in the field of engineering, and the University of Tübingen with a strong background in neurosciences and also in machine learning. And it was a time when there was kind of a change in the mobility sector. So e-mobility came up, the idea of autonomous driving was on the market, and that was a time when the government had the impression that probably also, I mean, because many working places in Germany, they are somehow related to the automotive sector, and they had some fear to become left behind. And therefore, that was basically the background story of having this cooperation between academia and industry with the idea to facilitate the transfer of machine learning methods to industry. And then some years later, we as a cluster of excellence started with the idea to find bridges between machine learning and all other scientific disciplines that are around at the University of Tübingen. I will come to this in a minute. And at the same time, also the Tübingen AI Center was established, which had the idea to do the machine learning methods transfer into economy, so the small and medium-sized enterprises. So that's basically the mission of the Tübingen AI Center. And we also network with other European partners under the umbrella of ELIS, so the European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligent Systems. That network started a couple of years ago and has joined PhD supervision programs and also joined postdoc programs. So that's setting a little bit the scene. And we try to have all these different initiatives that are running in Tübingen at one place. And that is something that you are obviously also doing, and the idea that you are following. So it's probably something that we have learned from your side. So put all the people together on one spot. And we as a cluster of excellence, we are already there, and the others. So you see here on the right-hand side a simulation of a building that will be ready for moving in at the end of the year. So that's the Cyber Valley building, and then others are coming and are being established at the moment so that we have everything on one place. And just in the neighborhood of that place, in 3 minutes walking distance, we have the so-called Max Planck campus, because we are very much cooperating in that field with the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems and also with the Max Planck Institute for Biological Cybernetics. So they are just around the corner, and that spot is located in the so-called Technology Park in Tübingen. That is a place and an area that was developed to provide spaces for spin-offs from the university in the field of biotechnology. And also medical technologies. And that, of course, provides also the perfect environment for the startup initiatives that we are also running under the umbrella of the Tübingen AI Center. Okay, now to our machine learning cluster of excellence. So we are funded by the German Research Foundation. We started in 2019. And we have funding for 7 years. So that means funding will be with us until end of 25, and we are at the moment heavily busy with writing up a follow-up proposal to become another 7-year funding period that will then bring us from 26 until end of 2032. So that's our mission, and that, Ulrich, is obviously something that reminds you on a slide that you have shown yesterday when you talked about AIM South Africa and how you see how you are moving into the future. So we also had these two bubbles. So on the left-hand side, machine learning community, on the right-hand side, the different academic disciplines that we have at the University of Tübingen, and you showed that you would like to bring these two circles together, and that's exactly at the heart of our mission, so that how we have started off in 2019. And so the basic idea is really to understand how these different scientific disciplines, you name it, neuroscience, medicine, or social sciences, geosciences, linguistics, and so on, how they are interested in taking up machine learning methods. So each of them is, of course, they have quantitative methods in their scientific approaches, and each of these scientific disciplines may have a need of taking up these machine learning methods into their hypothesis generation. And there's also this backwards loop because, of course, all these different disciplines may have different requirements on taking up these methods into their hypothesis generation. And if you're doing something like that, you may also be interested in what does it mean for science as a whole. So if we are moving forward and doing probably also something like automated hypothesis generation, how will it change our role as being a scientist? So this is something that we also reflect in our cluster of excellence. So philosophy and ethics of machine learning is not a side aspect of what we are doing, but it's rather in the center of our interest. So how do we do that? So we have hired 3 different professors in machine learning, and the most important thing that we have done is probably establishing these research groups, because they are placed at the intersection between machine learning and one scientific domain that is addressed by that research group. For instance, machine learning in climate science. So that's one of our research groups. The other, machine learning in medical image analysis, machine learning and human cognition. So all these 7 research groups, they are exactly placed at the interface between machine learning and one scientific discipline. And we also established core facilities, so the Machine Learning Science Cloud, to provide compute and storage power for our scientists working in our machine learning cluster of excellence. We have established an ethics and philosophy lab addressing just the question that I have mentioned before. And we have an innovation fund pool, so money that is available for doing pilot projects in order, again, with the ambition to bridge machine learning with one research field in the other scientific disciplines. And that's not the whole community. So we have, besides these groups that we have established within our cluster of excellence, we have 40 other cluster members, principal investigators who are also eligible to take part in this innovation fund projects. So how do we look at it and how do we do that? So we have on the right-hand side these data-driven prediction methods, and on the left-hand side, physically motivated prediction methods, so mechanistic models. In many cases, if you put them into some scientific practice, you have some unknown parameters that you need to estimate, so numerical models that you're running to address one particular scientific question. And now the idea is really to bridge these 2 worlds with each other and to find clever ways to combine machine learning approaches with these classical mathematical modeling. So for instance, using machine learning methods to find parameters for these numerical models, or even learn differential equations in these data lakes that are floating around. We are not happy with only investigating or finding correlations within our data sets, but we are more interested in finding the causality that drives the correlations. And of course, try to improve also the uncertainty or reduce the uncertainty when we are doing predictions with numerical models. So these are all areas where we are working with our machine learning cluster of excellence. And just to briefly introduce one very generic approach, so it's the field of simulation-based inference. So that is becoming more and more popular. So where you really cleverly try to combine how you can use machine learning in a framework of getting better predictions by using a mechanistic model. So on the left-hand side, you have any kind of physically driven model. You may have also some data, and with them you can give an estimate about the probability distribution of a parameter, and with that you simply run simulations. So you create a synthetic data set, and with that simulated data you you use them as an input to an artificial neural network, so the neural density estimator. And in order to infer with statistical learning methods to infer the parameter distribution and the probability distribution of the parameters. And then the outcome of that neural density estimator you use to apply it on empirical data, basically, in order to find the full space of the parameters and to sort out the consistent samples, and with them you can go again into this loop and feed them in as input to the neural density estimator, and with that come to a better estimate, or a better estimate of the parameter distribution that is driving the mechanistic model. And that, I mean, we have Jakob Macken with us, so he's one of the scientists that are really working in that field and is deep into it. He was here at Ames South Africa just a couple of months ago and gave a training course here about this simulation-based inference method. And we will also have another workshop very likely towards the end of the year in Kigali at Ames Rwanda, or at Ames RIG. And the beauty of that method is that it is not restricted to any scientific area, but it finds really broad application in astronomy, in economy, in biology, in education, you name it. And as you can see, since the 20s, since we have started, I mean, it was definitely not only the cluster who pioneered that field, but this is one of the methods that really shows how machine learning methods can be combined with mechanistic modeling in order to improve predictions from these mechanistic models. How can we measure progress? How can we show that what we are doing well? So, of course, publications still, I mean, that's the traditional way of doing science. So peer-reviewed publications are very important for demonstrating scientific progress. And on the left-hand side, you see a circle, and you probably cannot read the names. So these are representing the groups of our principal investigators. And as you can see, before we have started that cluster, there were already some connections between them. And since we started, it really became a network of different, so that is on the right-hand side, since between 2019 and 2023, the publications that came out of our cluster. So you see how that network evolved and how we created that community. Now to our collaboration that we have together with Ames. So we started it 3 years ago. The so-called Ames Tübingen Fellowship Program. That means that we invite each year 5 of the Ames students who have finished their master studies with Ames to come and work with us in Tübingen on a self-defined project for a period of up to 9 months. So they have put their project proposal on paper. So we are looking for appropriate hosts for these different projects, and then we invite them to become part of our community in Tübingen for a period of up to 9 months. And a report of that is also written on our blog, and you can find the background story of the establishment of that project there. At the moment, we are discussing how to expand that partnership that we have started with that fellowship program with Ames. And this is something that we are currently discussing with you. Lessons so far that we have learned here. So, of course, and this is something that you are well aware of, community building matters. So you know that very well, as evidenced by this beautiful meeting that we have here. And what we also see is that over the last years, so many data science centers were established. So when we started, there were only a few around in the world. And I guess what we have learned from our approaches is It is not at all a service-oriented thing of establishing such a data science center, but it's fully science-driven. So that's at least our approach. So there's no way of just using or opening a toolbox and use some methods and put it out there. So it's always finding that sweet spot and developing the methods towards the needs of a certain project. And this is a fully science-driven approach. And what we also experienced is something that we did not anticipate at the beginning, but it's a rather trivial lesson. So machine learning is really becoming, in our community, a common language that prepares bridges between these different communities. So if a physicist is talking with a geoscientist how a machine learning method is going to advance the field that he is working in, this is really something where they can talk about and that brings the people together. It's probably, I mean, you're well aware of that because, of course, also mathematics is kind of a common language between many scientists. And in this aspect, machine learning is probably some sort of a dialect of that mathematics language. I guess leadership matters, so it's not so easy to become that community of 60 very clever people together and to work together into one direction. So for us, it's key that we are very transparent in our decision-making processes. So, but on the one hand side, give some guidance, but on the other hand side, also don't overregulate your community. So give some space that they can grow. And that is how we are defining our leadership in this cluster of excellence. So I'm almost at the end, but not without addressing also questions that were here around in that room. So I'm now here in a session AI and the future and Africa. So what can I, as a European, tell you about AI in Africa? Probably not that much, but I've learned something when I started. I mean, I just came before I came here to Cape Town. I visited our partners at Ames Rwanda. And I've learned from them that it's very important that with their scientific project that they are doing, that they would like to have impact on society. And I understand that very well, but at the same time, I also insist that as we are doing basic research, that always has kind of a self-purpose component. And this is very important because when you start something like that, you never know if it is becoming relevant probably in 10 years to come. But anyway, I fully accept that impact on the society matters, no doubt about it. And in particular in the field of AI and machine learning, these pathways between basic research and kind of an application or a product is very short. So, but then I guess the question that is out there is how can we really do this transfer and how can we do it in a way that it is for the common good? And under this perspective, the quote on the right-hand side, that was frequently shown here already, but I think it is equally important also to remember the quote on the left-hand side, because I cannot discuss this seriously how AI will probably shape the society in the future without or by neglecting the question of power. And just to give you an example, what I mean with that is, I mean, just think about the transformation from Twitter to X in the last couple of years. So, and that is, to my opinion, a very good example how the beautiful idea of creating a space for us or for the community, for many of us, a space to share knowledge, opinions, ideas, how that space became perverted by the takeover of a very egocentric, selfish billionaire. And that really brings the question into the room, who has the power for what? And this is something that we need to critically keep in mind when we are talking about how AI may influence society. And with that, I thank you very much to your attention, and I guess I'm done. Yeah, but I'm also happy to leave that quote. Thank you.
We have one more speaker today, and I mentioned earlier that the bedrock of development in AI and machine learning research and applications is infrastructure. Students, who of you have ever run or participated in a competition that's run by a company called Kaggle? Just raise your hands. Anyone who's participated in a Kaggle competition? One. Who of you have heard about Kaggle? Okay. Who of you know that there's a Kaggle in Africa? Who of you know that the African equivalent of Kaggle, and Paul, I'm going to lie about the numbers now, has at least 40,000 African data scientists participating in competitions and engineering on it? Okay, you are going to learn something remarkably new today. So it's my great privilege to invite a good friend, Paul Kennedy, to stage. Paul is Chief of Staff for Zindi. Zindi is Africa's Kaggle, if I could call it that. They developed the infrastructure on which many of these cool competitions and data science solutions are built. They're based in Cape Town. They have offices all over Africa. It's a great privilege, Paul. Thank you so much for being our last speaker today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great introduction. I'm here just in case you haven't heard the words build, AI, and community enough this afternoon. I'm just going to drive a couple of those points home. I couldn't have introduced Zindi better than Ulrich has already. Hopefully I can tell you a little bit more about Zindi and a little bit more about what we're doing to really support talent across Africa and actually even beyond. The number is now 70,000. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to Obam and to Jade and to Ulrich. You've said a lot of what I'd like to say, so you've set the stage really nicely. Apparently there's some struggles with this controller. Let's see. Okay, so this is Zindi's slogan, byline, words to live by, building AI together. And I just want to break this down a little bit so that you understand where we're coming from and what we're trying to do in the world. So Zindi was started a bit more than 5 years ago now, sort of early days around close to where the deep learning in Dabo was starting, and started in very much trying to address the same things, this realization that there are these fragmented communities or proto-communities all across Africa, people really fascinated and interested in AI, but not really sure how to do anything about it or what to do with this exciting new field that they're becoming a part of. A story my CEO, Selena, always tells is speaking to a data scientist in Rwanda, and he said, I just want to speak to somebody else who does what I do. He loved his work and he was just totally isolated. So that's where really Zindi came from. And so we're trying to build, and by building we mean both sides, all sides of the ecosystem, building businesses, building solutions, but also building people, building capacity all across the continent and beyond. AI is also a very broad term. When Zindi started, we were really very focused on supervised machine learning, but we're trying to expand that definition and really look at unsupervised machine learning, deep learning, generative AI competitions now, ML ops, data science, analytics. We're trying to really be a broad church in the data and machine learning space. And then together, community, and you've heard so much about it, but that really is the core of what we're doing. We don't believe that we can achieve what we want to achieve on the continent without community. Some of you may have seen Karim Baghir, CEO of InstaDeep, and he always talks about community as Africa's superpower in the AI space, and we subscribe to the same philosophy. So, this is a random group of Zindians during COVID. The guy pulling the peace signs is Sam Maskini. He's from Malawi. He's one of our ambassadors. And this is why we do what we do, because there are people like this all over the continent, in your universities, in your academies, in the workplace, and people organizing, just organizing because they're passionate, because they're excited, and we're just trying to really support and capacitate that as much as possible. Zindi doesn't exist without these people, and they bring ingenuity, passion, and this amazing DIY spirit that, I mean, you talk about DLI being 100% volunteer-driven. We have more than 200 ambassadors in 36 countries across Africa. We're not paying them, but it gives us this oversized presence on the continent. It feels to a lot of people that Zindi's everywhere and does everything, and we're a tiny team, but we're just supported by this incredible group of passionate volunteers. So I have drawn so many diagrams in my career at Zindi trying to explain Zindi. This might be my best one yet. I'm quite proud of this. Because we're a complicated beast. We are a for-profit business. We are trying to build capacity and infrastructure. We try to work with everyone, but we're also restrained by what it's like to be a startup. And we're working across academia, public sector, industry, the works. So the core of what Zindi is a platform. Zindi.Africa, you can check it out yourselves. It is free for anyone to join. And when we started, we were Kaggle for Africa. We were a place where people could participate in challenges on the platform. These were supervised machine learning challenges, and it would be things like, can you predict flooding events in Malawi? When's the next flood? And that has pretty obvious benefits, so that government can decide how to protect their people, for instance. But you know, as most of you will know, machine learning is really only limited by your imagination at this point, and so we have extremely broad range of challenges. We have hosted more than 300 challenges on Zindi at this point, and we cover the financial sector, things like churn prediction for telecoms, loads of agricultural challenges helping with yield prediction or precision agriculture. We've done conservation, we've done health. You heard about the Leishmaniasis Grand Challenge that we ran with Deep Learning Indaba. Really, the limit is your imagination. So we have, on the platform, principally we have these challenges. But what we've realized is that people were coming to Zindi not because they wanted to win money. We've given out a ton of money. We've given out more than 600,000 USD, and most of that has gone to the continent over the last 5 years. But most of our participants haven't and will never win a challenge on Zindi, but they're not there to win money. They're there because they want to learn, and this is a way to supplement what they're learning at universities. We also have a jobs offering. This is something that we're trying to grow. It's a commercial exercise for us. We believe that Zindi's long-term commercial value is to be able to help companies find talent. But we're doing it because we know that our community wants jobs. It's a great position that we're in. We're able to say we are actually still doing this for the people on our platform. So this platform has this virtuous cycle of people coming to the platform, learning new things, upskilling, and then growing in their own careers. They build profiles on the platform, but we couldn't do what we do without these two sections on the side. So on the left, you've heard a ton about communities already, but there are grassroots communities all over the continent that are feeding into Zindi through our ambassador programs, but also through partnerships with universities. We put our universities there. Like the list is long in terms of communities. And for us, what we see is that communities bring people to Zindi, and communities take skills and experience and, as you've mentioned, the infrastructure from Zindi. So that's the way we support each other there. We also run this ambassador program, so we provide a lot of sort of capacity support for organizers, community leaders who don't know how to run an event, don't have a Zoom password or a Zoom account. So we help them design flyers for their events, provide content if they need, provide hackathon spaces if they need, all those kinds of things that allow people to do the work that they're doing in their own community. And then on the other side, we interact with a very wide range of organizations. These are often commercial partnerships. Organizations come to us because they would like to have solutions crowd-solved. So we get our crowd of 70,000 plus users to work on very real challenges. Those solutions go back to the companies that are sponsoring them. But we also have organizations like Microsoft who come to us because we help them reach this broad community with Microsoft skills like Azure skills and so on. Organizations like IFPRI that want to support machine learning for agriculture on the continent. And then I've snuck R&B in there. We did an awesome competition last year with the R&B to predict short-term changes in consumer price index. And that is a very, very real commercial solution. So now we can say at the end of this competition that our data scientists, African data scientists, built machine learning models to predict CPI, which is multi-billion-dollar solution, and they're doing it better than the bank could do it. So we improved on those solutions, and like that is just, to me, mind-blowing. And the best part is I get to stand up here and take the credit for it. I didn't do much of that. So this is the only infographic I'm going to put on my presentation today. Every orange country you see is a country with at least one Zindian in it. That sounds a little bit flippant because obviously the whole continent is orange, but this is the result of coming on 6 years now of incredibly hard work. And to me, that's just mind-blowing. You know, we've heard the statistic about 0 institutions in Africa represented at NeurIPS. That is changing so fast. And you can be sure that there isn't a university teaching machine learning in every one of these countries. I'm not that well connected to the public sector, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but guaranteed there are people in under-resourced small countries all over the continent who are battling crazy things like power outages and no internet connection in order to upskill themselves via Zindi and change their own lives because they want to, because they care. And that is pretty mind-blowing to me. So just in terms of a practical illustration of how we see the Zindi model really changing the landscape of data science and machine learning on the continent, I'd like to introduce Darius and Nikhil. Darius is actually a Zindi he's employed by Zindi now, but he started his career as a data scientist on the platform, winning competitions. Nikhil was a data science student from India. They met on Zindi. They've never met in real life. They met on Zindi, participated in a competition that we ran with Airquo, which is a air quality monitoring startup spun out of Makerere University in Uganda. They met online, met on Zindi. They worked together on Zindi. They won the competition on Zindi, so they won a small prize. But Airquo selected their solution for implementation. So they got the opportunity for 3 months to work on implementing this solution in a startup. It's a small contract. It was for a small amount of money. But imagine the kind of impact that that can have on a person's career. But neither of these two had worked in machine learning before that. Darius didn't study machine learning at all. Nikhil was a student at the time. That is a massive shift. It's a fundamental shift in both of their careers. And I think that's really illustrates the power of what Zindi can do at its best. Darius, as I said, Darius now works for us, so we we get the benefit of poaching the best talent we find on Zindi to work on our own problems. So I titled this slide Challenges, and then I decided to change it to Challenges or Opportunities. I just want to give a sense of the things that I'm seeing in the sector. This session is really focused on talent, so I wanted to just touch on a few key things that I see. It's just my opinion. So something that I think is a real challenge in Africa is that we are now starting to have this homegrown talent, AI and data science talent. People are teaching themselves, they're upskilling themselves, they're getting they're getting their experience, and many of them are leaving the country, either leaving the continent, either physically immigrating to a more developed country, or remotely immigrating by not working on for African companies or organizations, not working for on African problems. It's something that Zindi is acutely aware of, because we know that there's a huge pool for data talent across the world, and Africa has this amazing supply. But it's such a delicate situation in my view, because we really don't want a brain drain situation. We want people who are gaining capacity and ability in Africa. We want them to stay in Africa and work on African problems. It's part of the magic of Zindi that we do present African problems, and if I could, I'd encourage them all to stay, or at least come back. But that is the other thing that we see, is that the diaspora does return often. Once they've gained some experience and made some money, they do return to work on African problems. I am no expert on this whole open data mining, data farming, but I do see it as a major problem. Data farming is a term coined by Chris Emezui of Landfrica, who many of you may know. It's also a concept that comes out of data feminism. If you haven't read Data Feminism, I have to encourage you all to read it. I think it's incredible, and it's incredibly important for anyone working in data in Africa. Basically, I just think that we have to be really careful about exploitation in how data sets are generated, shared, used. And I think Jade said it a lot better than I could in terms of bringing lived experience and bringing ownership to the communities that are actually responsible for producing the data and affected by the models that are produced by said data. Market maturity is another thing that we're seeing a lot of. We speak to a lot of businesses on the continent, and businesses are not quite where they should be or where they could be in terms of implementing machine learning solutions, either because their data isn't mature enough, or they don't have the expertise, or they don't understand it. It's sort of a lot of companies at that stage of, oh, well, I know we're supposed to use AI, but I don't know how or when or what. And obviously, a lot of African businesses are operating on a much smaller scale than Western businesses. So it's something that we see, and we believe we have a role to play in sort of building both sides, of which I'll talk about in the next slide. This is Africa. You all know that we face unique challenges in terms of infrastructure and so on, but I think there's also this sense that organizations outside of Africa don't get us. We're working with Microsoft because Microsoft doesn't understand how to interact with people, people on the continent. They have they're distant. So whenever you speak to an international organization, especially a Western organization, about operating on the continent, there's so much context that's missing for those organizations. So we see that for Zindi, that's an opportunity, but it's obviously a huge challenge as well. And then a talk on AI wouldn't be complete without mentioning the elephant in the room, which is generative AI. Who really knows where that's going? I'm no expert. But for Zindi, we're starting to keep an eye on it in terms of running generative AI solutions or challenges. So getting Zindi users to expand their skill set beyond data science or beyond supervised machine learning, say, and try to think about how they are incorporating generative AI, even if it's just into coding as a kind of a co-pilot situation. But we're trying to expose our community to a broad range of generative AI skills. And I think the thing that we're seeing is that you still have to have that foundational knowledge and skills in machine learning to make best use of the generative AI tools available. So, which way to the top? This is, I guess, what Zindi's thinking about. I've gone quite fast. I'm happy to answer any questions, but at the moment, the way we see it is that we have to build in every direction at once. Zindi realized a long time ago that we have to build both the supply and the demand. We see ourselves as a kind of an ecosystem connector, and so we're building in every direction. We're trying to build partnerships with every organization we can, universities, nonprofits, and so on. But we're also trying to build up African startups and African SMEs to help them understand. And we're obviously trying to build our community as much as we can, build their skills, build their confidence, and so on. I've talked a lot about technical skills, but there's more than that required in the talent space. What we see is that a lot of people in Africa let me rather say a lot of people on Zindi may have the technical skills required to, compete at a high level in a global workforce, but they often don't have the communication skills, or they don't have the, I guess the term is soft skills. And so that's something we're thinking about now, is that how do we bring that side of people's CVs up? And then for us, I feel like I'm doing this a lot these days. I think everyone working on the continent knows how much talent we have. We know that we're doing amazingly. We've heard so much about deep learning in Daba. We really are world class. Does the rest of the world know that yet? Jury's out. We have a lot of conversations with Western and American and European companies that don't necessarily trust that African talent is going to solve their needs. So that's a huge barrier for us that we need to think really hard about how to solve. So that's all I had to say. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I also wanted to just give a general invitation. Zindi likes to collaborate with everyone. We love to work with universities because we see that Zindi fits really well with universities. Universities offer a great theoretical intro, but sometimes there's some need for more practical applications. And so I'd love to work with any academics or universities. We love to partner. So come see me. I'll be here for a bit, and thank you for your time at the end of the day. Time for questions, or do we need to wrap up?
Aaron Paul will be around, but what Paul says is absolutely true. I was doing the annual reporting for a number of AI summer schools across Africa. Then I was writing the report for Somalia, and Somalia ran a hackathon on Zindi. And then I got to Uganda. The big summer school in Uganda ran a hackathon on Zindi for free. And so this story is repeated over and over again. So, Paul, thank you so much for you, for Zindi, for your team, for everything you're doing completely for free to enable the growth of the AI ecosystem in Africa. I think students, please give Paul a big hand.